Hey, Highpoint Rockers fans, and a big hello to the BosBabes fanatics. You guys all know that I've been doing these really fun get to know with all of the Highpoint Rockers baseball players that I have been allowed to get to know throughout the season. The season is starting to wrap up. The regular season, I cannot believe, is coming to a close. With that being said, the guys are currently on a 10-day road trip. They just had an 8-day homestand. And prior to that, they were on the road for another 6 or 7 days. So they've been very busy, not many days off, pretty tired, grinding and plugging away. But joining me today is my husband, Ryan Dull. He is the closer for the Highpoint Rockers. So stay with me because you guys are going to get to know him a little bit behind the scenes. So Ryan and I actually planned on recording this episode in person, but the time didn't allow for it with all of the baseball games and us working on our house and the baby shower. So here he is now doing this pregame from the hotel that they're currently staying at. And I felt it was best to end the regular season with him. As I have mentioned, I've been doing a lot of fun get to know style interviews with the Highpoint Rockers players this season, and I know that all of you fans have been fully enjoying it. Let's welcome in Ryan Dull.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So I wanted to start off this fun get to know you interview with the fact that your nickname is Dull Snacks. Where did this nickname origin? And I know you actually have a couple of jerseys with this in the back as well.
So it actually happened when I was like my freshman year of college at UNC Asheville. And at that time, I was like one of the smallest players on our team. So a lot of the other pitchers just referred to me as like snack size. So with how tiny I was, but then it also didn't help the nickname when we would go on road trips and we would stop at like a rest area that I would be the one at the vending machine all the time getting the snack. So it kind of just fit that would be my nickname with them. And I remember I told them whenever I got drafted that that's when I would use that as like my Twitter handle or any like social media. That's where it originates from. The jerseys were actually the Players Weekend in the major leagues when they used to do that. I felt like that was the most fitting nickname to put on the back of the jersey.
And let's talk a little bit about these snacks. That is a really cute nickname, first off. Favorite healthy snacks? And then also, we have to talk about some unhealthy snacks that you enjoy and like to indulge in.
Healthy snacks, I'd say fruit or like a trail mix or a granola bar. Those are usually like the healthier ones that I go with. When it comes to the unhealthy, we're talking like candy bars like Reese's, Snickers, anything with like chocolate and like caramel. I do indulge in some like potato chips as well.
As far as making breakfast, I know you are a huge breakfast person, and I can speak on this firsthand. A lot of the times I will say, "Hey babe, you want me to make you some breakfast?" And a lot of the times he'll be like, "No, like I enjoy my time listening to my music or whatever he happens to be doing, playing catch up on Twitter or on his phone while making his breakfast." I try to let him have his alone time while he's doing that. And then you have our dog Decker like right by his feet trying to catch any scraps that might be falling on the ground. But with that being said, I know you love to make breakfast. What do you enjoy eating every morning? And what got you into loving cooking breakfast so much?
Started like a few years ago, maybe 2016, 2017, having multiple conversations with my trainer back home about making sure I reach like a certain amount of like carbs, protein, and fats throughout the entire day. And then the more I started doing the calculations, the more I can reach certain numbers if I get more of them in breakfast before I work out, and then capitalize on like carbs and set myself up for like a bigger dinner as well. So everything's kind of calculated, and I've like adjusted it as I've gotten older as well. So it's usually like more predominant like egg whites and then like 1 or 2 eggs. But then I also throw a little bit of salt, some dill wheat, and the occasion like some mozzarella cheese as well. But then I would love just either like turkey sausage or just bacon. And then depending on the day, either 1 or 2 2 things of oatmeal or like a protein pancake or waffle. And that's usually almost like an everyday, at least like when we're at home or in the off season. When we're on the road, it's a little bit different depending on if there's a place that we can go actually to sit down for breakfast, or I just have to order something and just go with what's available.
And home cooked dinners. I know you get a lot of home cooked meals, both from myself and your mom. What are some of your top home cooked meals? I know that your mom's meatloaf is definitely one of them. And I know that you fully enjoy when I make Italian dishes like lasagna, chicken parm, eggplant, dishes like that.
Exactly. Those are probably my 2 favorites. Like my mom's like meatloaf recipe has been passed down from my grandma to her. So, and I know my mom's going to write down the recipe so we can continue to pass it down. And then, yes, I love like all the Italian food, even getting to hand make the chicken parm, the meatballs, and just doing the sauce together. And I also like love like a steak or salmon night as well, just something different. But I know like we go to the store and handpick like which steaks we want or how much salmon. Like those are probably my top 4 when it comes to dinner food.
So Ryan and I, definitely in the off season, but in season 2, when we have the free time on a free day, which we don't get too often, we do like to cook dinners together. And I find it really cute that he'll help me either meal prep or, as he mentioned, go food shopping. We'll kind of sit there and make out a food shopping list like everyday normal people do. And things such as making mashed potatoes, for example, I'll be the one to cut up the potatoes and prep them and boil them and pick out all the seasonings. But one of his favorite things to do is he does enjoy mashing the potatoes. And I love when he does it because it takes the load off of my shoulders and he gets all the lumps out. And then our dog Decker likes to lick the little masher. So he gets a little treat on the side as well. I'm going to ask you a couple rapid fire type of questions if you want to give us some brief answers to each of these. And I know you don't drink that often, but if you had a drink of choice, what would that be?
Usually it's like a bourbon or whiskey and like Sprite. Usually that's been like my go-to more than like a beer or anything.
Do you have a top artist or music genre?
No real top artists, but a lot of the music I listen to is country, a little bit of pop, but also like a lot of Christian music as well.
What do you enjoy doing on your downtime, the little downtime that you do get?
Majority of the downtime is spent with Decker and you on our off days. Occasionally we will play some video games depending on the weather, take Decker for walks, and let him play in the pool if we have time.
Speaking of video games, what are your top 2 favorite video games?
I've been playing a lot of like Madden because I use it as a way to just like keep up with like helps me in my mind, I guess, when it comes to like fantasy football. But also, I play a lot of like MLB The Show. I play some of the PGA 2K. Those are like the main. I usually stick with sports games over like a Call of Duty or Fortnite.
And speaking of fantasy football, I know that you, along with a lot of your Highpoint Rockers teammates and friends, are all getting involved. You guys recently just had your team draft about a week or 2 ago. Discuss a little bit about fantasy football. What does it mean to you and being able to keep up with your teammates in the off season? And for the ladies out there that are listening or watching this right now, if your guy's going to play fantasy football, let him do it. There's a million other worse things that he can be spending his time on. So just let the man do it. Okay. We're going to throw that out there. But yeah, discuss fantasy football.
We just did our draft a couple weeks ago and just finished up week 1 today. I love it, just like being able to stay in constant contact with teammates into the off season, especially if it's people that you're going to see even like the next year. So it's just constant. You can see how they're doing in the off season, but also like if you want to work on some trades or anything like that, allows you to just stay in constant communication, see how people is doing. It's a long but short off season, but being in constant contact with everybody, it just makes transitioning into the next season 10 times easier because you already know how everybody's been doing and you can just come in and get right to business with baseball and stuff. But it's just fun because it gives you something to look forward to on the weekends as well.
And would you rather go back in time or in the future, and why?
I'd rather go back in time, be able to like be there like in moments in like history, and picture doesn't do it justice. Kind of just be there and just be in the moment and just feel like a crowd's reaction or like the emotion in certain events. Just see how it all like truly unfolded in person instead of just having to read about it or look at a photo.
Now that fans got to know you a little bit behind the scenes and got to kind of get to know your personality a little bit better, let's discuss where you grew up, talk about your hometown. And I know obviously you are from the state of North Carolina, which a lot of the listeners already know that. But let's talk about the fact that you grew up in Winston-Salem and on the Kernersville line.
We grew up technically our address is Winston-Salem, but the way they drew the city lines is where like our front yard is in Winston-Salem, and then somewhere in our backyard is the line for Kernersville because the people behind us technically have like Kernersville addresses. So technically, kind of just grew up in both. We probably catered more towards Kernersville than actually Winston-Salem.
And I know your family has a heavy influence in the baseball world, both past and present, and also softball as well. So let's discuss some of that sports influence. I know your brother is obviously the head coach at East Forsyth, locally in North Carolina. Your mom recently actually just had the softball field at that same high school named after her, and your dad, which I think is really neat, helped coach you and get you prepared where you are now. But I think it's really awesome that back in the day, he traveled around. I don't know if it was with his brothers or if he did it with friends or a combination of both. But I remember him telling the both of us that he enjoyed going to different MLB stadiums and watching World Series. So if you can kind of talk about all of those things and how that big baseball influence helped influence who you are now.
So I just remember growing up as a kid, like, so it started as a tradition with, so my dad's dad, my grandpa, my dad, his younger brother, and I guess some friends of like my grandpa and my dad. So they would go to the World Series every year. They would just, depending on which teams were in it, they would pick certain cities that they hadn't been to and pick and choose which games. Usually it was the games that had games 3, 4, and 5. Those are usually the city that they went to. So they had a better chance of seeing 1 or 2 games. So this tradition started when my grandpa, probably before my dad was even born, or right after my dad was born, like when people used to wear suits to games. So that's where this tradition started. So baseball has been in our family probably since then, since my grandpa, maybe before like my grandpa, and they would go every year. So I just remember all the memorabilia from every World Series in my dad's trophy case, my grandpa's trophy case. They went to every World Series up until the strike in 1994, and they haven't been to one since then. Essentially from the 50s to the early 90s is how many World Series they went to. Having my dad coach me through Little League up until probably was about 15 was the last time he coached me. My brother helped coach me when I was about 14 through 16 as well. He helped coach my dad in the spring when he was done playing. So it kind of had like their influence up until pretty much halfway through high school. And then after that, it was my brother and dad. They would just help give me advice on how to improve, what coaches were probably looking for, and how to continue to get to that next level.
I know your mom had some type of an influence on you as well,
Mm-hmm.
although she wasn't involved directly in the sport of baseball. Softball is very similar. What type of an impact did she also have in your career?
She helped influence me from a young age as well. Like when my dad wasn't able to, like my mom would be in the backyard throwing batting practice to my brother and I. Only reason she stopped throwing is we kept hitting it back at her and hit her in the shin. So she said, "I'm done throwing to you." So that's when my dad kind of took over as like when it came to hitting and pitching. But my mom was there pretty much at every game growing up. Like she would be the scorekeeper, but then she also helped us teach like some of the fundamentals of the game as well when it came to like fielding ground balls, being in the right position in the outfield. Her softball mind and my dad's baseball mind just mixed together helped me learn the game quicker at a younger age.
At the start of your career, obviously you played in your backyard, as we are discussing, with your mom, your dad, your brother, probably with some of your childhood friends who ultimately ended up being your groomsmen. So shout out to all of your childhood friends as well that you currently still stay in touch with. Kernersville Little League. Let's discuss Kernersville Little League a little bit, T-ball, playing Little League, and any of your top memories if you can dive deep into the depths of doom of those memories that are probably so far back there that I don't know how you can even dig them out.
So Kernersville Little League holds like a special place in my heart because that's where it all started for me. It started for my dad, my brother. It's like we all played up until we couldn't play in Little League anymore from like 5 to like 15, 16. So we all utilized every year that we had to play in there. And some of my best friends, my brother's friends all came from Little League as well. The competition that we had from starting at 9 to when we were 16, like that's how good of an area of baseball we had. And it just drove us to be better each year. And then when we got a little bit older, we would play together on the weekends, but then go and play against each other during the week in high school. It made the area appreciate baseball, but also showed us how talented and how much talent can come out of our area. Some of my favorite memories from Little League, 2005 summer. I remember we had lost the first 2 games of our regular season, and then we didn't lose another game the entire season. So we ended up winning the regular season, the tournament. I think we won like 20 some games in a row to win it all. Then we started our senior league all-stars that summer, won the district handily. I think we 10-runned every team that summer. Then we went to the state tournament. And I just remember that first pitch of the state tournament, I slipped on the mound, gave up a home run, and then that was the only hit they had. But then we ended up coming through the losers bracket to win the state title. And then we got down to the regionals and we went 3-0 in pool play. And then we ended up losing in the semifinals. But overall, like that was probably one of my favorite summers I've ever had, where the guys that we were with and the travel was just like, it was one of the most team bonding experiences I've ever had.
Staying on the topic a little bit longer with the Kernersville Little League, I know yearly you try to host a Kernersville Little League camp. You guys help raise money for Kernersville Little League. So discuss that a little bit.
Around like 2016 is when my agent and I started to discuss the whole plan about how can we get a camp to the Little League. So that's when we started planning, and we've had like I think 4 or 5 of them now, and all the proceeds, everything raised, auction items, like all of that money goes to the Little League to help the upkeep of the fields, the lights, and like any other things that the Little League needs. So we've been able to contribute a decent amount of money through the last like 5-6 years just by doing this camp alone, and being able to get more of the young players and get them involved in baseball early and try to just impact each player as best as we can and try to get them maybe to come to the Little League and have the same experience that I did growing up.
Thank you for sharing so much about your early years. I'm sure the listeners and those that are tuning in right now fully enjoyed getting to know you from back in the day. We're going to fast forward a little bit and talk about your pro days and obviously a little bit about college baseball. You attended UNC Asheville in North Carolina, so you kind of have always been heavily involved in the state. Discuss that college. You were a starter. So for those of you guys that come up to me all of the time, which is hilarious, at the ballpark, and they're like, why can't they just put Ryan in? Why isn't he a starter? Why can't he just pitch for us a little bit more? And I'm like, that's not how this works. Yes, he was a starter in college, and then he slowly transitioned out for whatever reason when he was in the A's organization. So I'll kind of have you talk a little bit about that whole experience, being a starter in college and then transitioning into a relief pitcher, the way people can better understand what happens during the different levels of baseball.
So I ended up going to UNC Asheville. They were one of the few schools that had even recruited me. Coming out of high school, I was more of like a late bloomer, so I didn't really have that many places to play. Just going to Asheville, it more felt like home to me. And I knew like when I got there that I was going to have a chance to throw, maybe start early on, compared to going to like some big schools to where you have to sit on the bench and just throw out of the bullpen for a couple years, and then you get a couple innings, or maybe you end up having to go somewhere else to actually pitch. So that was a big discussion like my dad and I had about going somewhere where you will be able to actually get on the field and get in front of like scouts more often. I started all 4 years, did have a couple relief appearances because that was like the goal of our pitching coach, was more of either have me close games because we didn't have good enough guys to close a game, but he also needed me to start as well. So I started majority of the time, and then we eventually got good enough bullpen arms to where I didn't have to relieve anymore. But then once I got drafted and got to Oakland with the A's in the minors, that first short season, they had me in the bullpen just because I had thrown so many innings already that was their way to monitor that. But then while I was down there, they asked me if I wanted to be a starter or a reliever, and I said reliever because I enjoyed it that so much that summer. So then fast forward to the next year in 2013, they had me in the bullpen, and I was still doing well, but our pitching coach actually talked to the A's front office trying to make me a starter at that time. The A's front office said, no, we like him where he's at in the bullpen. So me becoming a starter ever again was ended right then.
Based off of that answer, so for those of you guys that ask me all the time while I'm at the ballpark, there's your answer right there. Any advice to those that are currently listening that are looking to choose a college based off of athletics or academics? What advice would you give to them?
I'd say definitely look into the school academically as well, because one big thing my parents always told me is like anything can happen physically while you're on the field, but you want to be at a place where you just enjoy the school, the people around you, and you are comfortable going there just in case something athletically doesn't work out. You're comfortable and will enjoy finishing like your degree there. When it comes to athletically, I looked at where is like the best fit for me, where could I get more playing time, but then also like how is like my relationship with the coaches. Do I see the coaches sticking around long enough for like, are the coaches going to be there by the time I even get on campus? Like that's a big question that I think a lot of younger kids need to understand, is the constant revolving door of college sports is these head coaches, sometimes they get offered a bigger and better job. So like you got to understand like the rest of the recruiting process. Like, do you still want that school? Because sometimes even new coaches that come in, they don't have to honor scholarships either. So like you want to wait a little bit longer and see how situations are going to pan out before you make a commitment like your freshman, sophomore year. Like who knows what's going to happen 2-3 years down the road.
And I want to discuss draft day because obviously this happened shortly while you were in college or after college. What do you remember most about your draft day, starting your career in the pros, and your favorite memory with the Oakland Athletics organization?
So at draft day, I just remember because that was the year of the new draft. They dropped it from 50 rounds to 40 rounds that year. But then that was the first year where they had the bonus pool for the top 10 rounds. So those teams were trying to figure out how to manipulate the pool with like being able to save money on like older players like early. And I remember my dad and I talked after the draft, like had we known how teams would approach that, we would have told teams that we'd be willing to take the bare minimum in the top 10 rounds, just say I was a top 10 rounder. I paid attention to the draft the first 2 days. And then it got to the third day and I was like, all right, I'm just going to go hang out with a couple of my best friends. So we went to breakfast, hung out at their house. I would look at my phone occasionally just see what round the draft was in. But I just remember sitting like on the couch at my buddy's house, and I get a text from the A scout and he asked if I still wanted to keep playing baseball. And I said, yes. So he said, all right, we're about to take you in this round, in the 32nd round. He answered him. I told my friends and they pulled up the draft. And I have one of my close friends recorded the audio from that day. So they heard my name getting selected. And then after that, it was just like a blur because I was on the phone with my parents, my brother. I think both of them were in tears that day. The next day, our A scout came and had signed the contract, and I asked him, I had to have a couple days because I had to drive back to Asheville, pack up my apartment as best as I could. And then I was on a plane like 3 days later, and then I was in Arizona, and the rest of that is just a whirlwind. Like it happens very fast.
Are there any top memories within the organization that you can remember? And one of them I'm actually about to bring up, which is a little fun fact in a quick second after you answer this yourself.
Coming through the minors, like the group of guys that I got to play with, like we were from day one, like we all just kind of meshed together really well. And every stop that we went, we always played well. We won like our division, played for league titles. Like we won like 2 league titles together. Getting to hang out with those guys every day and see like how many big leaguers came from our team alone. Eventually, like get into 2015, getting the call to the big leagues, that was probably one of my favorite memories I have. On top of like in September when we actually clinched the playoff berth and gotten to celebrate, because that was the first time and only time for me like in the big leagues to be able to do that.
So here's a little fun fact, and I'll have Ryan elaborate on it a little bit more. But Ryan actually has one of his jerseys. I believe it is a 4th of July jersey, hanging in Cooperstown in New York in the Hall of Fame. He actually holds an MLB record. Not a lot of people know this because if you do know Ryan personally, he isn't boastful. He doesn't really talk about things that he has accomplished unless you ask him directly. So yeah, I wanted to bring up that fun fact that he does have a jersey in the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and he actually has a lifetime little ticket that allows him to go into the Hall of Fame, which we haven't been able to go yet. I have it. I want to frame it for our house. And eventually, we're manifesting it right now. We will go to Cooperstown and we will take our son to go see see Ryan's jersey. But let's talk about the fact that you do hold a MLB record.
Yeah, so the record is for most inherited runners stranded consecutively. So it started at the beginning of 2016, I believe. And each time I came into an inning, runners on, nobody scored like that inning. So I got out of the jam without anybody scoring. So I did that. I don't know how many actual appearances it was, but it was enough to have 36 runners total. July 4th, I happened to, was the day I broke the record. I had no idea it was even like something that was even kept track of until after the game. Our media team, one of our media people asked me to stay in uniform, and they brought me and had to do the post-game interview, and that's when I found out I had broken the record. I had no idea about it at all until then. And then the only reason I specifically knew the date is because of it being 4th of July and I had the jersey. So I knew that it was an easy jersey to find when it came to sending the jersey into Cooperstown.
I almost feel like sometimes it's better to not know that you are on a streak.
Mm-hmm.
That way you don't get in your own mind. And the reason why I'm mentioning that, and Ryan doesn't even have to elaborate on this, but a lot of the Highpoint Rockers baseball players this year have been doing incredibly, whether that be an RBI streak or getting on base streak or hit streak, whatever the streak happens to be. In Ryan's case, actually, which we don't want to jinx it, but he's doing very well with the high save percentage. But a lot of the times I'll ask the guys during post-game or pre-game interviews, hey, did you even know that you're on a streak? And a lot of them will jokingly laugh and say that they didn't know until after the streak was posted. But anyways, I will switch on over. I'm so happy you guys got to know a little bit about Ryan, baseball related, behind the scenes, his family. So now you guys are going to learn very briefly about us and our relationship. And then, of course, we're going to wrap it up with some Highpoint Rockers talk and then fully end the full episode with a couple fan questions that I just recently got asked through Facebook. So let's hop right into it. How did we meet? I'm going to be very brief with this. A lot of you guys already know it, but with Ryan mentioning that he was within the Oakland A's organization, some of his friends that he met that played for that team or teams within that organization, they were also from the Boston, Massachusetts area. You guys already know this. I'm from up north. Ryan happened to be in town for just one weekend visiting some friends. We were both at a Celtics game. We went out together afterwards, started a friendship. Long story short, COVID happened. We had some free time. He invited me to come visit him. I went to spring training, which turned into a spring break because all the sports got shut down. And here we are almost 5 years later, married with a baby on the way. And I don't think we would change anything about our story. And I would say it's a lot of fate, a lot of luck, and we were just at the right place at the right time. But our wedding day, Ryan and I got married back in November of last year, so 2022. And I just wanted to ask him briefly about what he remembers about the wedding, and then also the fact that we are becoming parents in the next couple months, which is pretty surreal to even wrap my brain around sometimes.
Big memories from the wedding is just being able to get both of our sides of our family finally together for a change, and then just having like our friends, family, just being able to see everybody and just enjoy a night, just like to celebrate us, and also being able to just celebrate us getting married and starting our lives together, knowing that we wanted a family, and then when we don't know when it was going to start, and then now here we are, almost a year later, expecting our boy to be here in the next couple months. So it's been fun getting to discuss with some of the teammates that are having kids as well. Like, we're all going through this together, just at a different stage, but we get to talk about what to expect and things to get and how to prepare ourselves the most as well.
Yes, I know we are both very excited, anxious, all of the feelings to become parents in the next couple months. And it's going to happen right around our 1-year wedding anniversary, which is even more exciting. So the month of November is going to be a very memorable one for us as I start to wrap up our love life, because again, I just wanted to keep it very brief. As I mentioned, Ryan and I have been dating for almost 5 years. Our 5-year anniversary is in January from the time that we first met, which doesn't even feel like we've been together that long. And again, our 1-year wedding anniversary is coming up on November 11th, which again blows my mind. Don't know how that time has gone by. Any relationship advice you can give to those listening?
Trust yourself, but also you got to communicate well. I feel like a lot of great relationships have very good communication. And as long as the communication is well, then you're able to work through anything and get through anything together.
All right, Rockers talk. We have to obviously talk about the Highpoint Rockers. That's why you guys are probably mainly tuning in. Let's discuss the Highpoint Rockers, the team, the fans, the atmosphere, all of the things.
So far, my time in High Point has been amazing. Like, I only knew about High Point maybe in 2021. I knew that they were coming, but I've worked out with Mitch since I was in high school in pro ball, and I knew he was on the Rockers. So he actually tried to get me to the Rockers before the 2021 season, but I happened to get picked up right before that season. And then once I ended up getting released from the Mariners organization, he was one of the first guys to reach out to me and try to bring me to High Point. And then talking to my parents, to my agent, he said, like, if we're going to play independent ball, like, the only place we're going to do it is going to be at home in High Point. And glad that was probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, being able to be around Frank, Jamie, Bert for these last 2 years. Like, they've helped me become a better player and get back to doing what made me most successful. Just have fun playing baseball again. It's probably some of the most fun I've had in years playing baseball, just because it's not about playing for like the analytics or anything like that. You're just out there playing for fun. And if you're doing well and get picked up, it's fine. But either way, you're enjoying coming to the ballpark each day, seeing your teammates, and just going out there and playing for each other.
We want to obviously discuss the fact that you've had a number of top memories with the High Point Rockers. I mean, we went to the championship last year. Obviously, unfortunately, our team did not win. We have already clinched the playoffs for this season that we are currently in for 2023. You have been pitching very well this whole season. And again, I don't want to jinx it, but since we've been dating, I feel it's the best you have pitched confidently since we have been together, which I've been mentioning that to your parents off and on all year. What does it mean to be a closer? I know you've went from being a starter in college, and then you did some middle relief off and on for a while, and here you are doing something a little bit different and maybe out of your comfort zone, but you are striving at it. So first off, describe, what does it mean to be a closer? Like, what is a closer, and what is the mindset in a high leverage win or lose type of situation, which is basically every time that you walk onto the field and on the mound?
I mean, I've had some experience closing, like coming up through the minors, because the way I learned was teams wanted you to throw in high leverage situations coming up through the minors. So when you got to the big leagues, you've already experienced throwing in high leverage situations. And then now you have a game plan on how you been successful in high leverage situations. So coming into High Point, like being like closing out games now, it's nothing I haven't done before. And I know there's no situation I haven't been in before. So it's just an experience factor. Now having Bo behind the plate, Brian behind the plate, they both understand how I want to pitch and what makes me successful. So being on the same page with them allows me to be successful. And then having our defense been as good as they have been all year, trusting that they're going to make the play, it makes my job a little bit easier. All I got to do is make sure you execute every pitch and then just trust the defense. And because once it's out of your hand, it's out of your control. Having that good connection with your catcher about make sure you're on the same page of what pitch to call and then just trusting it.
So let's discuss your very amazing high save percentage this year. I don't know if this has changed in the last week and a half since you guys have been on the road. But from what I understand, about a week and a half ago, you were the league leader with 18 saves for the season. So what exactly is a save? Can you describe that for the listeners? And are you currently still in the lead? I know you kind of been neck and neck with one other pitcher this season.
I believe me and that other guy are still tied. I haven't looked at the box scores recently to know. So maybe he has one more, or maybe we're still tied. I really do not know about that. So we'll start with the ninth inning. If you come in, you're winning by 3 or less, you get the last 3 outs, that is deemed a save. Or say like you come into like a middle of an inning and you're up maybe 3 or less, or there's like a runner or two on that could make it a save situation, you get out of that, then that is deemed a save as well.
So how do you stay so calm in these high leverage situations? I know I get asked this question all of the time. I will have fans come up to me and say, are you nervous that he's going out during these situations? And I don't know why, but for some reason I stay very calm during it. I know that I have no control over it. It's you, God, the universe, whoever, the players behind you. I know the catcher has a lot to do with it. The umpire has a lot to do with it. So there's just all of these things that I don't have any control over. So my answer is always no. It's in his hands. He's going to do what he needs to do with the situation. And it's funny because if you see Ryan's mom, she'll be sitting there. She won't move her seat. She'll have to sit in the same exact seat every time. And she'll kind of just like rock back and forth every time. I don't know. That's just how she handles it. I handle him walking into these situations a lot differently. Back to the original question, I guess, is how do you stay so calm during these high leverage situations?
For me, like I've learned in the past that like a lot of it's out of my hand. All I can control is having the conviction in the pitch that's called, and then just executing that pitch. Because once it leaves your hands, it's out of your control. So it's just more, did you prepare enough to make that each and every pitch? And then also, like I've learned through Oakland how to just slow the heart rate down and allow yourself to think, because the faster that your heart rate gets, your mind's going, everything's going to speed up. So you learn how to slow the game. If you can control your breathing, slow down your breathing, then that will help keep your heart rate down, and you can actually think while you're actually on the mound as well. So I think learning to take deep breaths and how to take a deep breath properly helped me learn to stay in control of those situations.
So as we start to wrap this up, and we're going to have some fan questions very shortly, how do you get past a bad outing? And then on the flip side, how amazing is it celebrating a big win, which you guys have done a multitude of times this season?
So getting over a bad outing is just more of, the best for me has always worked is once you leave the field, it's over with. You don't worry about it anymore. You don't want to stay up at night. I should have done this, should have done this. It gets out of your hands. No need to worry about it anymore. And just know you get to the field the next day. It's a new day, and you're starting fresh and starting with like a new streak. So it's more of just take it day by day. Each day is different. So there's no reason to worry about a previous outing. You can look back and see, like, this is what I did wrong, this is how I can improve, but there's no reason to just harp on having a bad outing. But when it comes to enjoying like the good ones, it's more of just the same thing as having a bad outing. Like you enjoy the victory at the field, build upon like what you did well, and then you just, once you leave the field, all right, tomorrow's a new day. Now we got to find a way to repeat what we just did the previous day.
Final topic of conversation before we switch into a couple of fan questions. Obviously, the playoffs are upon us. You guys are on your 10-game roadie. I like to call it a roadie. It's a road trip. You guys are wrapping up the regular season. You have, I think, had 4 or 5 wins in a row. You guys did not play the best at home while you guys were at your homestand. So it's good to see you guys picking it back up currently. With that being said, what type of influence and energy are you guys going to bring into the playoffs, hopefully, which start next week?
And we're definitely going to try to bring like the same energy we've had all season, going out there and just trust in our abilities, that Jamie's going to have us in the right positions. Just go out there and just enjoy playing baseball, and knowing that as long as we're enjoying having fun, that our skills are going to be better than anybody else that we face.
Alrighty, so as we wrap this up, I have a couple Highpoint Rockers, diehard rocker fan questions. These questions were asked directly on my Facebook, and then we will wrap up because I know you guys have a game today. And this interview went a lot longer than I anticipated it going. But what team is your least favorite opponent in the ALPB? You don't have to elaborate too much, but I don't know if there's like a particular reason. I guess I can answer this question too. Our team rivals, obviously, or league rivals, should I say, are the Gastonia Honey Hunters. We're always neck and neck with this team all the time. So if you guys want my answer, that's my answer. Ryan, what is your answer?
I would almost say Lancaster, mainly because of like how they play the game. Like they're one of the hardest teams to prepare for, because like they're very good and like scrappy teams. So like they're always going to fight you tooth and nail from beginning to end. So like they're the hardest ones. And I think the amount of speed that they have makes pitch a little bit different, but also like the games, every time we play them, like it's a different style of game than what we've been used to playing. So like more of preparing for them to, they'll bunt, they'll hit and run a lot more, they'll steal more than any other team that we usually play in our division.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And this question was asked by Sherry Andrews.
Probably 10 years from now, I probably will be retired and then working on my next adventure, whether it's helping the next generation of players get at a facility not far from our house, and then probably have another kid as well, and enjoying just being a dad and being at home, retired life. but also still staying in tune with the game of baseball. And who knows if I'd be coaching with the Rockers? Who knows? I don't know what's going to happen in 10 years.
So this question is from Fred Lassiter, which we all know Fred. He comes to a lot of the games. There are plenty of Highpoint Rockers fans that have become family with both Ryan and I. So shout out to all of the Highpoint Rockers fans. You guys are all amazing. Last question. First off, he says he hopes he sees you back with the team next year. Ryan, we obviously don't know where he's going to be next season. We won't know any of that probably till next spring. So I won't even have him answer that because we don't know where he will be, although he does enjoy playing for the team. You never know what can happen in the next 6 or 7 months. But Fred wants to know, are you planning on playing winter ball this year? And I'm going to assume no because the baby is on the way.
Correct. Yeah, no winter ball this year, just because he will just be barely like a month old or not even born yet by the time like half of winter ball is over, and there's no need for me to be down there knowing at any moment I'd have to fly back, and getting back to the States from another country is not easy. So the best is just stay at home and be a dad and get ready for next season. I think my body will just enjoy having time off.
Well, Ryan, I fully enjoyed having you on here. I know I took up way more time than I anticipated. I know that the listeners and the Highpoint Rockers fans and the baseball fanatics out there definitely enjoyed getting to know you a little bit better. So thank you so much. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your road trip and a great game today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.